2 out of every 3 cheese brands I investigated are not real cheese. The FDA classifies them as cheese products, cheese food, and processed spreads. And some of these are almost certainly sitting in your refrigerator right now. I'm exposing 8 brands you need to stop buying and 4 that are the genuine article. This comes from Bloomberg lab tests, class action lawsuits, and federal criminal prosecution files. We're starting with a lunchbox favorite that has never legally qualified as cheese. Number 8. Laughing Cow. Those little foil-wrapped wedges have been showing up in lunchboxes since 1921, when the brand launched out of France. They taste fine, but the FDA classifies Laughing Cow as a pasteurized processed cheese spread. That is a legal distinction, not a marketing choice. To earn that label, the product has to contain at least 51% cheese by weight. What fills up the other half is emulsifying salts, milk protein concentrate, whey, water, and a lineup of stabilizers. The actual cheese-making process, where you coagulate milk, separate curds from whey, and press them into shape, never happens with Laughing Cow. Instead, pre-made cheese gets blended with additives in a heated mixing tank until it reaches that smooth, spreadable consistency. It is closer to a cheese-flavored spread than to anything your grandmother would recognize as cheese. And they do not hide this. The packaging says cheese spread right on it, in small print beneath the cow. But hardly anyone reads that far. They see the cow, they see the word cheese, and they put it in the cart. If you enjoy the taste, that is your call. But understand what you are actually buying, because the next one is worse. Number 7. Great Value Grated Parmesan, the house brand at Walmart. If the label says 100% grated Parmesan cheese, you would expect the container to hold 100% Parmesan. You would be wrong. In 2016, Bloomberg News sent samples of store-brand grated Parmesan to an independent lab for testing. Great Value came back at close to 8% cellulose. Cellulose is a plant fiber derived from wood pulp, and the FDA considers it a safe anti-clumping agent in small amounts, between 2 and 4%. Great Value was running at nearly double the accepted ceiling. That means close to 1 out of every 12 spoonfuls you shake onto your pasta is not cheese at all. It is filler, and it is not just about cellulose. A subsidiary of Dairy Farmers of America tested 28 brands of grated Parmesan and found that only 1 in 3 labels were accurate about their protein content. 1 in 3. When the protein numbers do not match, that is usually a sign that cheaper ingredients are padding the product. Your grandmother made her sauce with a wedge she grated by hand at the kitchen counter. What you are buying at Walmart would be unrecognizable to her, but the next brand might surprise you even more. Number 6. Cheese Whiz. Kraft introduced this in 1952, and back then it contained a meaningful amount of real cheese. Dean Southworth was one of the food scientists who helped develop the original formula. In 2001, he picked up a jar from his local grocery store, tasted it, and told journalist Michael Moss it tasted like axle grease. When Southworth checked the ingredients list, cheese was not on it. 27 ingredients were listed. Not one was cheese. A Kraft spokeswoman later told the National Post that the product does still contain some real cheese, but when pressed on how much, she declined to answer. The company said cheese is not listed as an ingredient because its component parts, like milk and cheese culture, are listed individually instead. Today, the first ingredient is whey, a liquid byproduct left over after milk gets curdled. After that comes canola oil, maltodextrin, milk protein concentrate, modified food starch, and sodium alginate. A single 2 tablespoons serving delivers close to 20% of your daily sodium limit. The FDA classifies Cheese Whiz as a processed cheese product, which is the agency's way of saying this does not meet the legal definition of cheese. And that brings us to a product millions of Americans trust without question. If you are learning something from this investigation, do me a favor and hit that like button. It helps more people find this video. And if you are not subscribed yet, now is a good time. I release videos like this every week. Number 5. Borden American Singles. Borden has been a name in American dairy since 1857, when Gail Borden patented his process for condensed milk. That is over 160 years of heritage. But the cheese slices they sell today are a long way from that history. Flip the package over and you will find 3 separate thickening gums on the back: xanthan gum, locust bean gum, and gar gum. Real cheese does not need gums to hold itself together. That is what the natural proteins in milk do during the aging process. Borden labels its slices a reduced-fat pasteurized prepared cheese product. What that tells you is that this did not qualify as cheese, did not qualify as cheese food, and barely qualifies as a cheese product. A single slice packs roughly 350 milligrams of sodium, about 15% of the daily recommended limit. Two slices on a sandwich, and you are already at 30% before you add anything else. Borden built its reputation on real dairy. These slices trade on that name without living up to it. But the next brand is one almost everybody has in their kitchen. Number 4. Velveeta. In 1918, a Swiss immigrant named Emil Frey was working at the Monroe Cheese Company in New York when he figured out how to repurpose broken and misshapen cheese wheels into something smooth and uniform. That was the original Velveeta, and it was real cheese. Real enough that in the 1930s, the American Medical Association gave it a seal of approval. But that was a different product entirely. In 2002, the FDA sent Kraft a warning letter telling the company to stop labeling Velveeta as a cheese spread because it no longer met the legal standard. Kraft changed the label to pasteurized prepared cheese product, a term that has no FDA standard of identity. There is no legal definition for what those words mean. Today, depending on the variety, the first ingredient listed on a package of Velveeta is not milk and not cheese. It is whey. The rest includes canola oil, modified food starch, sodium citrate, gelatin, and sorbic acid. A single serving packs over 400 milligrams of sodium. Your grandmother might remember the Velveeta that came in a wooden box in the 1940s. What sits on shelves today is a different product wearing the same name. And the next two are names you probably trust completely. Number 3. Kraft Singles. James L. Kraft patented processed cheese in 1916 and changed the American kitchen forever. A century later, the product his company sells in those individually wrapped slices does not legally qualify as cheese. Every package is labeled pasteurized prepared cheese product. The FDA requires that label because Kraft Singles contain less than 51% actual cheese. What makes up the rest is a blend of whey, milk protein concentrate, modified food starch, sodium phosphate, and a list of other additives that stretches to nearly 20 ingredients. Under the FDA's classification system, a product needs to be more than half cheese to even be called pasteurized processed cheese. Below that threshold, it becomes cheese food. Below that, cheese product. Kraft Singles fall into the bottom category, and Americans buy an enormous quantity of them. Surveys from Statista show that Kraft Singles remain one of the most purchased cheese-labeled products in the country, year after year. Hardly anyone buying them knows what that label actually means. They see the word cheese, they see a familiar yellow wrapper, and they assume they are buying cheese. They are not. And the next one involves the green can that has been on American tables for decades. Number 2. Kraft Grated Parmesan, the green can. It has been a kitchen staple for generations, and for most of that time, nobody asked what was really inside. Then Bloomberg ran its lab tests. Kraft's grated Parmesan came back at just under 4% cellulose. That sits right at the edge of the FDA's accepted range of 2 to 4%. And cellulose is only part of the picture. In 2016, an Illinois woman filed a class action lawsuit against Kraft Heinz in federal court, alleging that the label 100% grated Parmesan cheese was deceptive because the product contained cellulose, potassium sorbate, and other non-cheese ingredients. Similar lawsuits followed in New York, Missouri, and California. Kraft responded by saying cellulose is FDA approved and that their cheese was within acceptable limits. A federal judge dismissed the central claim in 2018, ruling that a reasonable consumer would not be misled. But the fact remains that what is inside that green can is not 100% Parmesan. It contains fillers, preservatives, and anti-caking agents. Real Parmigiano Reggiano contains 3 ingredients: milk, salt, and rennet. Kraft's has considerably more. And that brings us to number 1, which is not just a bad product, it is a federal crime. Number 1. Castle Cheese out of Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. This company supplied grated Parmesan to some of the biggest grocery chains in America for nearly 30 years. Their products ended up at Target under the Market Pantry label and at thousands of stores through Associated Wholesale Grocers, which supplies over 3,000 retail locations in 30 states. The label said, 100% grated Parmesan cheese. The FDA began investigating in 2012 after a fired plant manager called in a tip. What they found was that Castle's Parmesan contained no Parmesan cheese whatsoever. 0. It was a mixture of Swiss, mozzarella, white cheddar, Havarti, and cellulose filler, sold under a label that promised pure Parmesan. The company had been doing this since the early 1980s and had $19 million in annual sales by 2013. Castle's president, Michel Mertier, pleaded guilty to federal charges of introducing misbranded and adulterated food into interstate commerce. She received 3 years of probation and a $5,000 fine. The companies paid $1 million in combined restitution before filing for bankruptcy. For 3 decades, millions of Americans were shaking something onto their pasta and calling it Parmesan. Not a grain of it was real. Now, the 4 brands you can actually trust. Number 4. Sargento. This is a family-owned company out of Plymouth, Wisconsin. Founded in 1953, they were the first company in the country to sell pre-packaged sliced and shredded natural cheese. And the word natural actually means something here. Pick up a package of Sargento cheddar and look at the back. The ingredient list reads pasteurized milk, cheese culture, salt, enzymes, and annatto for color. 5 ingredients, and every one of them belongs in cheese. Sargento does use powdered cellulose as an anti-caking agent on some of its shredded varieties, which is worth noting. But their block and sliced cheeses are as straightforward as it gets in a standard grocery store. In 2025, Sargento launched a natural American cheese with only 5 ingredients. That matters because every other American cheese slice on the shelf typically lists 9 or more, including emulsifiers, stabilizers, and concentrates. It took the company over a decade of research to make an American-style cheese that melts properly without processed additives. Good Housekeeping gave it a 2026 Kitchen Award. 3 generations of the same family, 70 years of real cheese, and they have not cut corners yet. But the next 3 have even shorter ingredient lists. Number 3. BelGioioso. In 1979, an Italian cheesemaker named Enrico Auricchio moved his family from Italy to Wisconsin with 2 master cheesemakers, Mauro and Gianni. His great-grandfather had founded a cheese company in Italy generations earlier, and Enrico wanted to continue that tradition with the best milk he could find. He chose Wisconsin because the dairy farms there produced milk that was, in his assessment, simply unmatched. Today, BelGioioso operates 7 facilities around Denmark and Pulaski, Wisconsin. Every cheese they make starts with fresh local milk collected daily from nearby farms. Their ingredient list for fresh mozzarella is pasteurized milk, vinegar, enzymes, and salt. 4 ingredients. Their Parmesan wheels age a minimum of 10 months on wooden shelves in climate-controlled caves, hand-turned by the same cheesemakers who have been doing it for decades. In 1990, BelGioioso became the first American company to produce authentic Italian mascarpone, and they now supply roughly 70% of all mascarpone sold in the United States. The Parmigiano Reggiano Consortium in Italy estimates the global counterfeit Parmesan market is worth over $2 billion. BelGioioso does not play that game. Real cheese, real ingredients for over 45 years. The next one is even more remarkable. Number 2. Cabot Creamery. This is a farmer-owned cooperative based in Vermont, operating since 1919. That means the company is owned by the dairy farmers who supply its milk. Over 800 farm families across New England and New York are part of the cooperative, and the decisions about what goes into the product are made by the people whose cows produce the milk. Pick up a block of Cabot Vermont Sharp Cheddar. The ingredient list reads pasteurized milk, cheese cultures, salt, and enzymes. 4 ingredients, without a single filler, gum, protein concentrate, or modified starch in sight. That is cheese the way it was made before industrial food companies started cutting corners to save a few cents per unit. Cabot's cheddar has won more awards at national and international cheese competitions than you would ever expect from a regional cooperative. Their seriously sharp cheddar has a crumbly, nutty character that comes from proper aging, not from chemical additives designed to mimic that flavor. The cooperative model matters here because it removes the pressure to cheapen the product to satisfy outside shareholders. When the person making the milk is also the person selling the cheese, the quality stays honest. And that brings us to number 1. Number 1. Tillamook. Founded in 1909 by a group of dairy farmers in Tillamook County, Oregon. Another farmer-owned cooperative, and this one operates with an openness most cheese companies would never consider. They invite the public to tour their creamery. Walk in and you can watch the cheese being made through glass windows. A company that lets strangers watch its production has nothing to hide. Their ingredient list is about as clean as you will find at a mainstream grocery store. Tillamook cheddar contains milk, salt, cultures, enzymes, and annatto for color when needed. You will not find fillers, stabilizers, or thickening agents anywhere on the label. Their cheddar ages from 60 days to over 2 years, and every batch is tested before it ships. Unlike companies that source milk from wherever it is cheapest, Tillamook uses exclusively its own member farms in the Pacific Northwest. The milk arrives at the creamery within hours of milking. This is the standard your grandmother retailer would recognize. Milk from a local farm turned into cheese by people who have been doing it the same way for over 100 years. That is what real cheese looks like. Here is the simplest rule I can give you. If the ingredient list runs longer than 5 or 6 items, put it back on the shelf. Real cheese is milk, cultures, salt, and enzymes. That is it. I investigated olive oil brands the same way and the results were just as troubling. That video is on your screen right now.